you are into movie-related discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am The Wiz, and I am here today to review the documentary from 1996, Muhammad Ali, When We Were Kings, directed by Leon Gast. I remember this film coming out in 96, and it first premiered in Sundance in January of that year. It got a lot of acclaim because people were stunned by the footage that was in this. And then it went on the following year to win Best Documentary Feature at the Oscars. It definitely had a lot of good critical reception when it came out. It had a very limited release in the theaters. I did remember a lot of critics liking this movie quite a bit. Why don't we get into the review of When We Were Kings, directed by Leon Gast. So let's get to what the movie is about. This is about the fight between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. That's called the Rumble in the Jungle, which was a fight that was for the heavyweight championship that was set in Zaire around, I think it was 1974, I think? Yes, it was October 30th, 1974. What this movie does is it chronicles the point from when Ali and Foreman get to Zaire until the end of the fight. Let's get to the documentary and see how I thought of it. It was a good documentary. I don't necessarily understand the great amount of praise it's gotten, but I will say that it is a very well done documentary. It is a talking head documentary to a certain extent, but what the film does, it really focuses in on Muhammad Ali. One of the good things that this movie does is it shows really how charismatic he really was. The most that I am familiar with Muhammad Ali are the movies about him, which is One Night in Miami and Ali. Some footage that has been through osmosis that I've gotten from the media from when he was younger, and a lot of imagery from when he was older, when he was suffering from Parkinson's. That is where my familiarity with Ali really rests there. And of course, he was in WrestleMania one year. I think it was WrestleMania 3, I think. I'm not sure. That's where I'm familiar with Muhammad Ali. This film really does show how charismatic he is. Much of a person that people were drawn to him because of how charismatic and how much of a good speaker and good talker he is. And for that, I'm going to recommend the movie just to see that footage and to see him do what he does and really show why he was that liked. But other than that, kind of disappointed by the movie. This movie has gotten a lot of great ratings. Critics love this movie. It's got an 8 at IMDb and 98 in Rotten Tomatoes. It's a beloved documentary. I wonder if the critics who like this movie like it because it reminds them of that time, and they already know the intricacies involving around this event. What I'm basically saying is it seems like a movie to me that going in, you want to probably know as much as you can about the Rumble in the Jungle, about this fight. I know a little bit of it, but I didn't know a lot. I didn't know a lot about the stuff that was going on around the periphery about the movie, about the Rumble in the Jungle. And the movie does hint at certain things. It hints at Foreman and what he was going through at the time a little bit. It definitely goes through Ali and what people were saying about him and how he was going to get creamed. It goes through a little bit of the politics in Zaire. It goes through a little bit around Don King and his involvement. That's all the movie really does. It goes a little bit in those directions, but it keeps it centered on Muhammad Ali. A few disappointing things that I have about the movie. One is that it just centers on Ali. Now, this could also be because maybe Foreman didn't want to get involved in the documentary all that much, or there wasn't a lot of footage with Foreman. There is a good amount of footage of Foreman in this, though. I really wish there was more on Foreman in this movie. I mean, the setting of the film in Zaire is fascinating, and I would have loved to know more about what was going on in Zaire at the time, and then go over a little bit of it about the person who was running Zaire. I really wish there was more about what was going on the outside, just to get a feel for the setting. Great documentaries to me not only tell you about what's going on, but about where it's going on. Because a lot of what happens in these documentaries is not only just about the event, but how that event reverberates, or how the setting reverberates into the event. And that kind of gets washed away in this movie. I'm more than a little disappointed that it didn't get into that aspect as well. It's actually as basic as it gets, to be absolutely honest. It is a Talking Heads movie, but again, it just goes into more about Muhammad Ali and how gregarious and how charismatic he was. I really wish they did more about Don King. I just wish there was more in there. And not as in, I want to know more, it's so good. It's more as, I wish there was a lot more meat in the bones in this movie. It's about a 90-minute documentary, and I think it's not enough. I think there should have been more depth into what was going on into it. Especially since what happens after is actually more fascinating as well. I think a great way for this movie to have ended is if they showed what happens to Foreman and Ali after. And I know it's going to have to get into the fact that Ali suffered from Parkinson's after 1984. It might have to get into that. But two critical things happened after this that I think would have been fascinating when dealing with this movie. And is that Foreman, at a very old age, did the unthinkable in 94 and won the heavyweight championship. I think he was in his 40s, I think, which is unheard of for a boxer. I mean, that could have been interesting to also point out that Foreman did what Ali did in the Rumble in the Jungle in this kind of 180 sort of way. And then with Ali, in 96, he lit the torch for the Olympic Games in Atlanta. Like, that's another fascinating thing that they could have put into this. Now, to be fair with the Ali thing, this film released in 96. It was in Sundance in 96, and it was released in 96 as well in limited theaters. And then it won the Oscar in 97. So that might not be a fair criticism, but I think they could have done a little bit more on that because their story is more fascinating as time goes on. They hint at certain things, like they hint at the political leanings of Ali in this movie, and how he would go on to be much more political activist at the time. I wish they would actually go into more detail as to like something happened in Rumble in the Jungle that made him a more effective speaker for this, or something about Don King. Because of this, Don King got more and more power, which led him to use his fighters more and more as time goes on. These types of documentaries are great, but this also adds to the problem that I really think that if you are not intimately aware of what happens and what makes this fight important, I don't think you're going to get much out of this movie. It is an interesting movie the way it is. I did like it for what it is, but I honestly felt there could have been a lot more to it, and this is why I was kind of disappointed in this. Okay, so my final thoughts on When We Were Kings. It's a good documentary. I understand why people like it. I think it's a little overrated. I'm not incredibly impressed by it. It's decent for what it is. The footage that they have in this movie is definitely really good. I just wish there was more to this. I really wish in the Talking Heads part where they do interviews, they had 3 people that were in the interview space. There was 2 writers and there was Spike Lee. Why did they not have Muhammad Ali and George Foreman? I think Ali could still talk effectively, even though he was still dealing with his Parkinson's at the time. I still think he could. And Foreman was, I think it was before the George Foreman grills at this time. And he was doing commentary on fights at the time as well. So he could have easily been a talking head on this too. Those are 2 people I would have been fascinated to know more about. And Don King. Well, there's probably obvious reasons why Don King didn't want to do this one, but I think those are missed opportunities. With that said, I'm going to give this documentary 3 stars out of 5. It is a good documentary. It is interesting. It does show the event and the interesting things about it. I just wish there was more to this. I don't know about you guys, but some of you might say, I like a documentary that shows me something and it motivates me to go look up more. I'm kind of the opposite. I kind of want to have a documentary tell me about this whole story. But then if I want to look up more to get more granular details, I would be more than happy to do that. Or to be like, wow, is any of that real? Oh my God, it is. That's what I would prefer in a documentary. Otherwise, it's a good documentary. The footage is really good in it. The stuff about the fight is interesting. I did enjoy the documentary. I just was hoping it was more than what I